lie.
I'm in San Quentin Badger section. It's the year 1999. I just got sentenced to 30 to life. And I'm sitting here in San Quentin waiting for one of my co-defendants to show up. He had stayed back in court to try to file an appeal. And so he was waiting for his sentencing, and he was going to come to San Quentin. So I'm waiting for him. I have been there a while, and I'm eventually going to get transferred out. A couple of my co-defendants already have. And so I'm in the cell with my cellie, and I say, hey man, how can I stay here longer if I don't want to transfer yet? And he said, well, you got to go to the hole. And so what happens after you go to the hole, they'll just take your file and they'll put your file on the bottom of the stack. And so, your counselor won't go get your file until later once it goes through the stack again. So I'm like, oh, for real? And he's like, yeah, that's what happens. And I was like, all right, cool. So I wanted to stay and wait for my co-defendant to get here. And so I just said, fuck it, I'm going to the hole. I went and grabbed some clothes and I started shoving them right by my door, like a little bit under the door and just kind of right there in front of my door. And I put baby oil all over the clothes. And then I set them motherfuckers on fire. And so I just sat there and waited. I saw the officer on the catwalk come running. He came running down there. He was radioing in, fire on fifth tier, fire on fifth tier. So, the officers come running up. You hear them all running up the stairs to the fifth tier. They come to my cell and they're like yelling at me going, put that shit out, put that shit out, And I'm like, nah, man, fuck you. You put it out. And so another officer steps in and he's got a fire extinguisher. So he starts hitting the clothes with the fire extinguisher. Then he fucking points it at me and hits me with it. Bah! And sprays me down, and then they fucking cuff me up. They get me out of the cell, and they start taking me to the hole. And when they take me to the hole at this time, it was Carson section. So they had the hole in Carson section. So when they took me over to Carson section, the officers over there tell these officers like, hey, we ain't got no room for them over here. Take them to overflow. So whole overflow. I don't know what the fuck they talking about. But so they start escorting me through the buildings and start taking me to a whole different building. So as we're going there, we get there, we stop in front of these big, huge metal doors. And it seems like, if you've seen it in the movies, like castles or something, like these two big metal iron doors. And they got a little slot on it and everything, just like in the movies, like if you slide it open, and that's what happened. So basically we step in front of these two doors and the officer takes his nightstick and he bangs against the steel doors. Bah, 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 and that motherfucking thing slides open and another guy in there goes, looks out and then he starts opening the door and I'm like, man, what is this place? And the officer that was bringing me over there, he was like, this is where they put all the famous people on TV. And I look up above the doors and I notice it says condemned. And I'm like, what the hell? And he's like, yeah, man, this is death row. I'm like, what the fuck? He's like, yep, this is whole overflow. So he walks me in, and when we come in, I'm just tripping now. I'm like, man, what the fuck? I'm on death row? Is that serious? But anyway, so they bring me in there, and I look at, you see people in their cells and shit, and I see the cells, and I'm like, damn, I'm tripping on it because the cells, they're like decked out. Like, people got like lots of stuff in there. I even noticed that there was a computer in some of their cells, and I'm like, man, I'm tripping on that shit. These motherfuckers got computers over here. And then we walk past this one area where it's the concrete yard right outside of the section of the building. And I see, people out on the yard and I'm tripping like, am I seeing red rags and blue rags? It looks like people are wearing red rags and blue rags out there. I'm like, well, what the fuck? So it's different over here. And so I'm telling them, like, I'm telling the officer, man, it's different over here for real. Like, these guys kind of got to go. He's like, man, they're never going home. They're sentenced to die. So, that shit's nothing. And he was right. It ain't nothing, But so they take me in there. They put me in a cell. And I'm over here for a little while. And it's crazy because I ended up getting a visit while I was over there on death row in that section. And And remember just going to the visit. It was a whole different area. It was different, you know. And they take me to a visit, and of course it's behind glass, but it's not like your normal behind the glass visit. It's just different. You can tell. So I get into this area, and they put me in this like room, you know, like normal, like where you go in a room and you have the glass between you and your visitor, right? But the thing about this room was it was padded. It was weird. It was a padded room, and it was dark, and it was just weird, you know? So they put me in this room, and my wife and my daughter come in, and they come in and they sit down, and the first thing my wife says to me is, "Why are we visiting over here? What is this place?" And I just didn't have the heart to tell her. I felt hella bad, you know, for my reasons why I went to the hole, because I'm trying to stay here. So I didn't say anything to her. I just told her, I don't know why, you know. And she didn't like it. And then after a while, she was like telling me, man, you know, the guy that they were escorting by us earlier, they told us to, you know, get against the wall, like stay back and all this stuff. And she was like, I swear it was that guy, the night stalker. And I said, oh yeah, that's him, definitely, gotta be him. I said, you know, I'm sure it is. And if you recognized him, and she's like, I swear it's him, right? So we're sitting there, and boom, they're bringing that guy that she said that they were escorting past her. They're bringing him by, and out the window of her side of the room, she could see him, and I could see him as he's being escorted by. And I'm like, that's him right there. That's the night stalker. And she's like, yeah, that's him that went by. And I remember her just saying she was just like creeped out by him, you know. But anyways, so yeah, that was my experience on death row. I stayed there for a little while, and I eventually went back to Badger section. But yeah, so that was my experience with going to death row. That's just real, you know, and that's not no place that anybody wants to be. All right, so you know, committing crimes, taking penitentiary chances, you can end up with a life sentence, or you can end up with yourself on death row. You know, it just ain't worth it, all right? So that's why I tell you guys these stories. It's all love. You know what it is. Stay the fuck out of trouble.